The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by a man who proves that a country boy can survive. Andy Hamilton of TrackWrestling.com. Are you a country boy?
I am a country boy.
Okay. I didn't know if farm, country, how that interweaves, but it's
I grew
official.
up in the country.
Yeah, it's official that you are a country boy and you've survived these 42 years. You're 43 now, aren't you?
Not yet. Almost.
You'll be 43 very soon.
Yep.
What, in a couple days?
No, coming up about 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
5 weeks. So you've lived this long, and boy, it's been a great ride.
You too, Kyle.
Well, yeah, but I'm not 43. I'm a little after you. You have the wisdom. You have a few months of wisdom and experience on me that I'm relying on right now.
I tell you what, Kyle, I'm almost 43, and today I experienced a first. Never in my life has anyone showed up at my front step with a pack of bacon, came in, turned on the oven, threw some bacon in the oven, and made me bacon. That was a first.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed. It's a country boy move. You should expect that being on the farm. You should expect those kind of great things. I know it's not your mom's homemade bacon, but I sure enjoyed it.
It was good bacon. It was some of the best bacon I've had this side of Finland.
Yeah. And you made a great bowl of oatmeal, so we're nourished. We're ready for this great edition of On the Mat. We have Tom Brands coming up a little bit later. We're going to talk about his recent performance against Minnesota and what he sees for the rest of the season and what his team outlook is. We're at the mid-season point, and Tom Brands is always a fun interview that we get to have. We've had some quality interviews here with Brandon Eggum. We've had Bob Bowlsby, and we'll stop with Bob Bowlsby because we've gotten some good feedback about the Bob Bowlsby interview. Our mailbag is heavy today, and we enjoy that. We like the feedback that we're going to get. We'll start with Dale Anderson, who was a two-time state champion for Waterloo West, wrestled for Bob Siddons, that went on to two-time NCAA champion at Michigan State. He just wrote in and said, "It brought tears to my eyes when you told Bowlsby that he was a fine young lad. I just don't know how Bob Siddons can have that impact on me even after he's gone." And then he had a comment about what we were talking about with fandom and how we get more people involved in the sport. He said, "I remember when Doug Blubaugh, who was a 1960 Olympic gold medalist, who actually was an assistant coach at Michigan State when Dale Anderson was there, he said that if you don't charge admission for a sport, people think it's not worth watching." I think those are very wise words.
It's interesting. That's a tough one for me.
How so?
I think about the disconnect between college wrestling and international wrestling and how we've talked about it time and again on this show, how you can have 20,000 people in the stands in Cleveland session after session for the NCAA championships. And then we get like a third of that total for 3 Final X stops. That doesn't make sense. So where's the disconnect there? And would we have been better off as a sport if we were giving away tickets to youth clubs, youth wrestlers, where they can come and watch superstars like Jordan Burroughs and Kyle Snyder and David Taylor, Kyle Dake, Jaden Cox, etc., for free and get introduced to international style wrestling?
Yeah, I think.
Would we have been better off? Would it have been better for our sport to have 18,000 people at 3 stops for Final X, even if some people are getting in for free? Some young wrestlers are getting in for free, and we're introducing them to freestyle and to freestyle wrestling. Next year, maybe Greco-Roman wrestling too, with Final X adding Greco.
but you still have to find a way to get them there. I think maybe it plunges a little bit deeper in how do we get them to attend, even if it is free, are they going to have the interest level to go? And it still takes that coach or someone to make that happen. And Jim Brown locally here in Cedar Rapids has made that happen with his Ticket for Kids promotion. I think he's on the cutting edge of that and allowing kids to appreciate World Cup wrestling, Iowa wrestling, Northern Iowa wrestling, Iowa State wrestling because of what he sees as a need. And I think he's fulfilling the need that you're saying. And
yeah, absolutely. He's doing a great job.
Other mailbag, Scott Beck, Michaela Beck's dad. Michaela Beck has an interesting story. She's part of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. She's doing a fantastic job right now on international wrestling. She is not going to college, but she wants to be part of the Hawkeye Wrestling Club because, as her dad puts it, she wants to be part of that high-level competition and give herself the best opportunity to succeed. He called in and just said, I want to give you some feedback on the Bob Bowlsby interview. And I went back and listened to the Bowlsby interview, and I got this feedback from Pat Kelly, who has also been a fan of PDI and says he's a consistent listener of the show. If you go back and you listen, it almost sounds like Bowlsby was saying that we don't have that female counterpart and that it's not going to happen. And so I think that some people may have taken that wrong. And listening to it, I just felt like Bowlsby was maybe more or less saying that we don't have it sanctioned yet. But if we did have that female counterpart like cross country or track, our sport would be better served. I don't know if you remember that far back to the interview, but that's how I took it.
That's how I did as well, that we're just not there yet. Not that it's not going to happen.
And that's how I took it too. So that would be the answer to that question. But I liked what Scott Beck had said about the sport and his daughter's participation, that as we go in and talk to Tom Brands, he's a big fan of Tom and Terry spearheading the program and feels like they are doing a fantastic job of bringing women into the Hawkeye Wrestling Club here in the last couple of years and making that a part of what we see for their movement in RTCs. Regional training centers are an important part of winning championships in high-level wrestling, and I think including females into that component. I think if you see someone as good as Michaela Beck going to Hawkeye Wrestling Club saying, this is what I want to do, I want to establish myself as a wrestler for my profession, and I can do it in Iowa City. I think that's a pretty big statement on the value of regional training centers as they stand today.
Yeah, and credit to Iowa for making this move, right? The Hawkeye Wrestling Club, the investment that they made into women's wrestling, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to ask Tom about that a little bit later in the show. But it's really interesting to me that Iowa is one of the programs, maybe the preeminent Division I program out there right now that's leading the charge on this front. When you think of it, that girls wrestling at the high school level, the scholastic level, is way behind in the state of Iowa because of the fact that it's not a sanctioned sport. Now we're seeing some people that are doing some tremendous things here, that are Coaches Association has a state girls only state tournament that's going to happen. That's awesome.
Good news.
There are some people that are just saying, you know what, the fact that the Iowa Girls State Athletic Association, that the Girls Union has not stepped up to sanction girls wrestling, that doesn't matter. We're going to take it into our own hands. We're going to make this happen. We're going to have opportunities for young ladies to compete against other girls. I think that's great. I think it's a tremendous step. And I think we're going to see more opportunities in the not so distant future because of that.
Also in our mailbag from Scott Beck, he knows quite a bit about the sport of wrestling, as I learned through the conversation. I don't know if you remember the Kistler brothers.
I do.
At Iowa. They were
Harlan, Lenny, Marty.
Yep. And Marty was the best. He was a two-time NCAA champion.
OW in 86, right?
Yeah.
Or 85?
I'm going to say,
I think it was 86. I'm going to look it up right now.
You look it up, and I'm going to bring up a point that he brought up. He's saying that the Kistler brothers aren't the most successful people in their family, that there's actually a sister, Darcy Kistler, who was a noted American ballerina, and I guess she's phenomenal and has had a fantastic career as a ballerina, and she's probably the most famous of the Kistler family. So I did a little research on that, and she is. It's pretty compelling story. So if you feel like doing a little bit more research outside of this podcast, check out Darcy Kistler.
Marty Kistler, 1986, 167 pounds. NCAA tournament was in Carver Hawkeye Arena. I was at that one, Kyle. Marty Kistler, major decision first round, major decision second round. Tech fall in the quarters, 9-3 win over Mike Van Arsdale of Waterloo, Iowa.
Yep.
In the semifinals, and a 15-3 major in the finals against Mark Van Tine of Oklahoma State.
So there you go. There's your piece of history for this podcast. Darcy Kistler, part of the famous Kistler family, and she might be the most famous of the group. As we continue on with our mailbag, we had a series of tweets about PDI and our concept of cumulative scoring that we want to answer. This is all from Ramey Walther, and we appreciate this feedback and the opportunity to really flesh out the concept of PDI, which stands for Point Differential Index. We'll start with his first question. In a dual meet, Team A wins 9 close 1 to 2 point matches, and Team B wins 1 match by injured default or pin. Should Team B win the duel? I'm just flat out saying yes, they should. As it stands today, dual meets do not count for anything other than individual results. And until that matters, and even if it does, I think that's what makes this concept compelling, is because you have to be very aware of those things, and you want to get dominant wrestlers, and you're trying to force a dominant style. So in my mind, I think that is the right answer for what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, that's the question that comes up most to us, right? With people playing devil's advocate with us. What if this scenario happens? I would say find me a scenario, a dual meet where that actually happened, because I haven't seen one yet, where one team wins by a fall and loses the other 9 matches by, what would it be, 2 points or less on average?
Yeah, it would.
So let's see if our listeners can find one dual meet where that's ever happened. I'm sure it has. We got a lot to go by, but it's part of sports. You're going to see instances in football where one team outgains the other 500 to 100 and loses. You're going to see instances in baseball where a team out-hits another team 10 to 1 and loses. They're not very common, but it happens. Now, there was a NASCAR race this summer where Kyle Larson led probably 90 to 95% of the laps, and a caution came out like right before the white flag came out. So they restarted, and he got beat on the restart and lost the race. I mean, it's just part of it. We need to do some diving into it just to see how many dual meets would change. Maybe it's an off-season project, or we can look at, how many percent of dual meets the outcome would actually change. Division I dual meets. We should take a look in that.
Yeah,
I don't think there are going to be many. What would you guess?
I'd say very few, because.
What would you say? Less than 5%?
Oh yeah.
Less than 2%, you think?
It might be in that 2% range. I don't remember anywhere that would be the case. Now, I've seen situations where a team has won 3 to 4 matches where you've won less matches than the other team and won the dual meet. I've seen that happen, but those are really rare. You just don't see that very often.
Yeah, I can only think of just one off the top of my head. Iowa beat Michigan one year at the national duels when Strip Matter, Juergens, Schwab, TJ Williams, I think those guys won big, and Iowa lost the other 6 matches and still beat Michigan in I think like a semifinal at the national duels out in State College, probably like 2001, I would guess. But I can't think of too many.
So again, if you want to challenge us on that, find a couple dual meet results and where that may have happened. His second part of this, a wrestler gets a takedown and a 3 and 3 4-point near falls. Ref awards stalling point. He wins 15-0 in the first round. B slowly builds lead until he's ahead by 14 in third round or third period. In last 5 seconds, he scores a takedown with 4 near fall and wins by 21 with a riding time point. Do you want B to earn 6 more team points than A? Again, I'm saying yes, because I think that's part of being savvy on the mat, because you're going to have to see a wrestler make decisions on how he's going to approach a technical fall, because you want him to go for the fall. I think initially when we came up with this concept, we're saying this is PDI. And so if we just go strictly point differential index as a numerical tool, then absolutely don't mess with that, because we're trying to see the most dominant wrestler. As it relates to cumulative scoring, maybe you have to tweak that a little bit so that a tech fall is worth 15 across the board, and instead of up to 21 points. That would certainly change the difference of the fall. But as it stands right now, I think, again, it's not fair sometimes. I think the uncertainty is fun. So if you're up by 14, what are you going to do as a wrestler? You're going to try to get the most possible points, which is 21. I'm saying leave it as is.
Me too, because I think one of our goals with this was simplicity, right? For the casual fan who understands if you win 20-4, you pick up 20 points, your opponent's team picks up 4.
Yep.
If you win 21-2, you get 21, your opponent gets 2.
Third part of this, pin over worst guy, not 22 times more important than a 1-point win over best guy. PDI would be more meaningful multiplied by strength of schedule component, which Andy has discussed. Strength of schedule could be opponent's winning percentage and opponent's winning percentage. Your thoughts on that, since you've been an advocate for the strength of schedule?
Yeah, when we're looking at metrics in terms of performance, not just looking at it from a dual meet standpoint, but when we're trying to evaluate performance, I've said that all along, that we need another component, because some schedules are apples and oranges.
Yeah, and I think with PDI, I say just keep the PDI part simple if we're just putting it as a numerical value. And then I think our solution was some way to make it comparable to baseball, where you have a PDI plus, where it's a different numerical value, like we do in baseball, where how many different statistics do you have to have a metric for baseball? It sounds like there's many that play a factor. So let's have a PDI and then a PDI plus. I think that's the solution.
I've got you on board, Kyle.
Okay.
That's what I've been saying all along, right?
I'm with you on that. And then the final part I really am bought in with, because I think when we first heard this on the cumulative scoring, I think Ramey brings up a great point on this about tournament scoring. And I won't go through all the scenarios, but essentially he's saying, how are we valuing 1-point wins on the front side, and then someone goes to the backside and gets on a roll with 22-point falls? What does that look like? And if we go back to the interview when we were talking about that, I think I probably said off the top of my head, why not just have cumulative scoring for tournaments? I didn't really think it through, but I think him bringing this to our attention really brings up a good point. And how do you evaluate cumulative scoring as it relates to tournaments? And this is one where I don't really have a good answer for that component of how it works for tournaments. I've only thought as far as dual meets.
Well, I think you'd have to substantially alter placement points so that can't happen, where it wouldn't make any sense if somebody squeaks their way through the tournament. Let's see Corey Clark as an example. When he won his national title a couple years ago, he won decisions all the way through. You get somebody who gets on the back half and they beat people up, lose first round, and then they beat people up all the way on the way through the backside. They shouldn't be able to score more points than a champion, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you get more opportunities to do it, because if you're on the backside and you lose in the first round, you get
7 matches. Yeah.
So some real thoughts on how you need to tweak that.
I think that's where, in talking to Mark Branch down at the South Beach Duels, and we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this, some on camera, some off, and he's like, this is where we need somebody from MIT to figure this out.
But as we talk about how MIT needs to figure it out. He also talked about the simplicity. I liked his comment where he needs to go into a locked room and try to figure out how the scoring goes. That was the best part of that interview. How do we get it to the point where there's simplicity? And I think that's the real question right now. And even Bob Bowlsby alluded to that in his interview. What constitutes stalling? If you're a new fan, what's this about locked hands? I just talked about this with, as it relates to the Rutgers Oklahoma State meet on the locked hands and what that looks like when you're in the bottom position. How do you explain locked hands to a beginner? Well, if they come off their base and they're in the standing position, you can lock your hands. But if you're down on the mat, you can't have locked hands. That's a confusing element for wrestling fans that are trying to get on board. So if we're talking simplicity game, let's get MIT to make it as simple as possible so that it's the best product as possible for the casual fan. So a lot to work through as far as it relates to point differential index. But I think it's just as far as a metric, a tool, absolutely let's use this. I think it's solid as it goes with cumulative scoring, how it relates to dual meets and tournaments. I think we're almost there on dual meets. The tournaments is a different bag that we really need to figure out.
Yep. Kyle, I want to rewind. I brought up that Michigan-Iowa dual meet at the 2001 National Duels.
Yeah.
Iowa won 20-18. Jody Stripmatter pinned A.J. Grant, number 2 versus number 3. Eric Juergens, major decision against Foley Dowd. Doug Schwab pinned Clark forward. Michigan got a win from Mike Kulzicki against Mike Zadek, 5-4. Then T.J. Williams scored a major decision against Pat Owen. Charles Martelli of Michigan beat Ben Shirk 4-2. Otto Olson of Michigan beat Gabe McMahon 10-9. Andy Rovat of Michigan beat Jessman Smith 9-7. Joe DeGane of Michigan beat Ryan Fulsis 5-1. And Matt Brink closed it out for the Wolverines with a 7-0 win against Josh Little. So 20-18 for the Hawkeyes. What do you think that score ended up on cumulative scoring if you went with our
Wow.
format?
I would have no idea unless you've done the cumulative scoring here, which you're shaking your head yes. So don't take this any longer. I'm fascinated to find out.
So 20-18, if you went with our scoring system, would have been Iowa 100, Michigan 51.
Really?
Because look at all those close wins for Michigan.
Yeah.
5-4, 4-2, 10-9, 9-7, 5-1, and the 7-0 at the end. But Michigan won 6 decisions, 4 of them by 2 points or fewer. And Iowa had 2 pins and 2 majors, 2 11-point majors.
I think this is what we're advocating for with cumulative scoring. I like it. I think the individual that goes for domination and tries to put points on the board should be rewarded more than someone that squeaks by, even if it is a tight battle and it's one versus 2. Keep that element. I think it keeps it fresh. I think it keeps it fun. I don't want to tweak too much with this. I think we're on to something here. Again, the cumulative scoring for tournaments really is a problem. So that is for MIT to figure out, not for us on this program. But I appreciate those questions. If you have topics of conversation that you want to send in, we always appreciate having a thick and heavy mailbag. Thanks for everyone that chimed in. Let's chime in on the topic of discussion right now, the marathon match between Daton Fix and Nick Suriano. Lots of questions about the hands to the face call at the end of the match and how that transpired. What's interesting about this is here we are in Cedar Falls, Iowa, doing this interview. Jason Wedgbury was the official for that. He just is the Cedar Falls High School principal. Just
goes to my church.
Does he?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a couple blocks away here. My first thought was, I wonder if when he goes into the high school, if any of the students have any idea that he was in a controversial match over the weekend, or if he's just the principal that they have to abide by. I
think they do. I got a text from one of the wrestlers, one of the Cedar Falls wrestlers Sunday, asking me what I thought about the calls. Yep. So,
Very interesting.
I don't know that many of them do, but I think, there are some that are plugged in and know.
Yeah. What did you think? I think it's the call. I think that's what everyone's saying is how can you do that? How can you make that call? But if it's the call and it's what the rule is, then
Yeah, I
you
think
have to call it. I don't know what else you can say on that.
It was, it's the right call. Whether you agree with the rule or not, it's the right call. You knew that when they started emphasizing this at the beginning of the season, you knew it was going to affect a big time match at some point in the season. It was only a matter of time.
And I don't know who brought it up. It might have been you, but since points are so hard to come by, why are you just giving away free points with a hands to the face call? At least give a warning, or just like anything with a caution. Maybe you do that first, but my goodness, points are really hard to come by, especially
with those two.
Yeah, it's just next to impossible. So not that you need to cater the rules to everyone because of how wrestling matches are executed, but man, just maybe a warning like you do with every other call in the sport.
You knew that there would be kind of an outcry from some people saying, why not just let them settle it? But you can't let the application of the rule be dictated by the time and circumstance in which a violation occurs. I mean, you can't call something in the first period and then not call it at the end. That's one of my biggest complaints with stalling, is that you see one guy that's taken all the risk for the first 6 minutes and his opponent doesn't get any stall warnings. That guy builds a lead, and then the opponent starts coming on really hard in the end, and then the fists start flying for stall warnings on the guy against the guy who's been the aggressor for 6 minutes. I don't like that. I don't like seeing rules applied differently in overtime or the final minute. So it was good to see, in one sense, it was good to see Jason Wedgbury make that call when it was the right call. Whether you agree with the rule or not, that's a totally separate argument, but really felt like I don't get too wrapped up emotionally in matches, but that one felt kind of like a gut punch on Sunday for our entire sport. Just that we had so much build up for a clash between two decorated wrestlers who have incredible pasts already, and they've got really bright futures. And yet we don't see any offense for 10 minutes. I don't see any offense in 10 minutes. We see incredible delays with the video review. It was more about all the stuff that transpired around the match than it was actually the wrestling itself. And that's a shame. Hopefully, if we get another fixed Suriano match, we get to see some offense and we get to see a clear-cut, decisive winner.
And I think everyone was thinking that it could be like when they wrestled in high school and that it had that potential. But I think you know that it's never going to be the same because there is so much hype, and you know what went on last time, and because of those scrambles and how exhausted you get, and you know what it takes to go through a match like that, you're probably a little bit leery when you get into that. Like, man, I went through torture chamber last time. Do I really want to put myself through that in this situation? And the answer was no, we don't. I don't know that you can blame them. It's tough. You're going against a tough guy, and you know what each is capable of. You're going to be cautious, and rarely does the hype live up. Rarely do you live up to the hype with a match like that, especially since you know what they're capable of doing. Rarely does it live up to what the expectations are. And it's just too bad that you just didn't see shots, and it became a situation where the officials had to dictate the outcome of the match.
You know what's weird, Kyle, is like we spent the spring and summer and fall watching international style wrestling, and think about how many marquee matches, like the build up to matches that we've seen in freestyle over not just this year, but last year. Snyder Sadulayev, incredible action. Burroughs and Chamizo for 3 matches. Great matches. You know, we felt like we got cheated a little bit this year with Snyder Sadulayev, and that it only lasted a minute 12 or something like that. Yeah. But you rarely walk away from freestyle wrestling feeling like you got shortchanged and there wasn't anything that happened.
I think part of it's the product that they've been able to develop.
It's the rule set. Yeah. I think that, we can have a we could probably spend an hour just discussing rules. And I wrote about it last week with the process, and I got a greater appreciation for what those guys go through, having talked to Mark Branch and just a better understanding of it. But also think like there are some things that we could do with folk style wrestling to encourage more action, force wrestlers to stay in the center and wrestle a little bit more. I think, there's some things we can do to speed up the product, but I love where freestyle's at right now. We rarely feel disappointed with the way a freestyle match turns out. We just aren't seeing 1-1 matches that are activity clock points, that are coming down to who went on the clock last.
Yeah, rarely. Yeah.
Wrestlers are settling it.
Yeah. Which is
settling it with offense.
Yeah. And I think we're even in an era now where there's just an appreciation for the product that Penn State is putting on the mat, because they are bringing an entertaining style regardless of what the rule set is. And kudos to them for that, because who doesn't want to watch the laser light show that Bo Nickel's going to put on regardless of who he's wrestling? You're going to be entertained, and it's fun to have that product. So not that we get spoiled by that, but I think we know that there is an entertaining brand of wrestling out there regardless of the rules. And there are select individuals, and we've discussed this. There are individuals that we gravitate toward, and typically they're the ones that are entertaining the heck out of us.
I would like to see Daton Fix against Nick Suriano in a freestyle match and see what that would look like. See if that would open things up. Because you remember Thomas Gilman and Nathan Tomasello and their matches in college? They were like defensive slugfests where it was virtually impossible for those guys to get to the legs. And what Gilman had a couple opportunities in the NCAA semis, maybe before he pinned Tomasello. Tomasello, I think, had a leg up in the air, but it was 1-1 going to overtime in that one. The Big Ten finals, the year that they wrestled there, I think it was Tomasello got one takedown and that was it. And yet they would wrestle these freestyle matches and they would be back and forth. Like it was like two totally different contestants out there that they wrestled in Lincoln here a couple years ago in the trials in what, maybe finals of the challenge tournament. And it was an action-packed match, a lot of offense. Would love to see what Fix and Suriano would look like in a freestyle match. So is it the contestants? Is it the rule set? What is it? I'm absolutely fascinated by it.
And I don't think either of us are saying that just because there was a high scoring match, it necessarily translates into entertainment. However, if it was 10-9, you probably know that there was some entertainment that happened. But a 3-2 match, although rare, can be exceedingly exciting if there's scrambles and there's things going on. And I think that's what we want to get to. If it's truly an entertainment product, the score usually dictates, when you see the box score, if you have not watched the match, that the higher the score, the more entertaining it was. But the benchmark for me of a low scoring, entertaining match was at the national duels. I want to say it was 01. I don't know if you remember Chad Erickson, who wrestled for Minnesota, wrestled a guy named Charlie Walker. And I believe it's from Oklahoma State. It was 3-1. And in my head, I remember thinking, this is the most entertaining 3-1 match that I've ever seen. I was able to see that match maybe 10 years after the fact. And I thought, well, I wonder if this will live up to my memory. It was better than what I thought it was, because they were both shooting. It was a complete offensive slugfest. I'd love to be able to get that up so people can see what a 3-1 match that's entertaining looks like. I think that's the prototype, but that's what you want. You want the scrambles, you want exchanges. And I think as of right now, as we talk about the freestyle, folk style debate, that is what freestyle is offering right now. It opens up the possibilities, and it's forcing you into some level of activity that folk style wrestling isn't at this point.
You know what I think it is? And I came around on this. It took me about 1.5 years, 2 years to come around on criteria as a fan of it. I didn't like it at first. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't help that we didn't have it on a scoreboard to know who was actually winning. There were instances where it was really confusing. But The best wrestling in college wrestling, to me, occurs in the final minute when one guy's up by a point and the guy who's ahead has been warned once for stalling. So you've got the 1 point lead, but he can't run. Freestyle wrestling, somebody is always trailing after the first 90 seconds. Somebody is always chasing and trying to come back. And that's why I think freestyle wrestling has it figured out. Somebody's always trailing. They've always got to catch up. It's never tied. I think that's one of the greatest things that freestyle wrestling has going for it.
I'd never thought about that. I think that has a lot of merit in how we can.
Because we see some great action in college wrestling in the final minute when one guy's up by a point and he's been warned for stalling and he can't run. We see some great action.
But go back to the story when you were at the Register that you wrote that caused a lot of buzz about this same topic, about just maybe the mundane nature of college wrestling that caused a lot of stir. I thought it was a well-written piece about how we get people emotionally invested in the sport, but sometimes it can be difficult to understand. I don't know if you remember that piece, but if you can go back to that, I think we're still dealing with that today.
The action is better. The action in college wrestling is a lot better. I think we've made the rules more complicated for a casual fan. And now we've got the count when somebody's down on the leg. We got the count when somebody's in a side headlock. And I can't remember who I was talking to a while back. It might have been Mark Branch, actually, with talking about, some kid being in a side headlock, kind of taking a guy over, and there's a count. Well, they weren't counting for near fall points. They were counting because of the side headlock. And so when that stuff is confusing to wrestling people, you can guarantee it's confusing to the casual fan who doesn't watch it a lot. I would just love to see our sport get to the point where people flipping through the channels and they come across a college wrestling meet, they can sit there and watch and, within a couple matches feel like they've got the rules figured out. And I think we're a long ways from that. I think we've gotten further from that. The upside to that is in the process, I feel like we've made the action better. I think, although I would rather see a pure step out rule, I think the edge of the mat rule has been positive in keeping guys on the mat. I think the wrestling has stayed on the mat better. We don't see people like milking riding time now with dropping down to the leg and hanging on and blatantly trying to build riding time. I don't know how you feel about riding time. I'd rather it go away. I think that's another thing that kind of confuses the casual fan as they're flipping through the stations. Why is one clock ticking down and the other one ticking up? That wouldn't make sense to me if I saw it in another sport. And I don't think that we see the best wrestling because of riding time, but it's my own personal opinion. I know there are a lot of people that disagree with me, and it would be interesting to watch college wrestling for a season without it. See if we missed it, if we feel like we're losing anything, or if maybe there's a little bit faster paced match where somebody's not trying to hold somebody down for a minute just to get that point and let them away after 101 of riding time. Yeah.
Well, and as we talk about who's entertaining and the brand they bring, you can count on Zahid Valencia or Bo Nickel, or even last year with Kyle Snyder. There's those staple wrestlers who are going to bring an entertaining product. And as we think about what just transpired with Minnesota versus Iowa, I think there's the 5-second window where Kaleb Young had that unbelievable rethrow that I could go back and watch 50 times. I think that's what the casual fan wants. They can relate to that. There's a 5-second clip where if you showed that on SportsCenter, you say, that's darn cool to see that. That was such a cool throw and a cool maneuver. But
it's action.
It's
right?
action.
Both guys.
Yeah.
Drama. One guy's going to win here. One guy's going to lose.
Yeah.
We know it's probably not winding up less than 10 seconds ago. We know it's probably not going to overtime at this point.
And we need more of that. That's the fun stuff. We need more of your insight. If you want to contact us, Twitter is a great way. You can go to Track Wrestling So it's at Track Wrestling on Twitter, at Wrestling Museum on Twitter, or send us an email. We'll be glad to put it into our mailbag. But for now, we need to get to our interview with Tom Brands coming up next. Andy, someone you know well, what do you think about getting to the head wrestling coach at the University of Iowa, Tom Brands?
Let's do it.
Our guest today, he is the head wrestling coach at the University of Iowa, 1996 Olympic gold medalist. He also wrestled for the Hawkeyes, was a 3-time NCAA champion there. Tom Brands, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
We're doing good. You having fun this season?
This season's been a little bit different for us. Fun. It's always fun. It's my definition of fun is probably a little different, but fun is the challenge. So yeah, but it's a little bit different. And we're wading through it. We're putting our best team on the mat week to week.
What's been the biggest challenge so far this season?
Well, we've dealt with an injury that ended a season at 174 with Michael Kemmerer. And we're dealing with an injury right now with Stoll that there's no real timeline on him. And the challenge is to have that patience, but also balance that with, the way the rankings are, you got to have a minimum of matches. You got to have, these guys got to wrestle to be considered in the ranking. So there's just a lot. And sometimes you get pushed into situations you don't want to be in. We got to make sure that we do the right thing every time for the individual. And I've always tried to maintain that. But this season's been a little bit tougher for that.
Tom, when you look at the NCAA relaxing the requirements for medical hardship, how much does that change things from your standpoint on where you go in certain circumstances with a guy that may sustain an early season injury?
It doesn't change my way of thinking. I know that it's good for the welfare of the student athlete, where they're going to have their opportunities to compete. And I know that's the intent of the rule, but we're still going to do the right thing for the individual, number one. And sometimes the right thing is to wrestle. I don't think it's just automatic, pull the guy because he takes a loss and, we're going to cut our losses type thing. And, as far as I'm concerned, there's been some abuses on that rule, and we will do it. We will use it, for the intent of the rule. And that'll be for the best situation for our individual.
Despite the injury to Michael Kemmerer, just listening to him in interviews I've heard, he just seems wise beyond his years. Despite the injury, how is he still influencing the room at the University of Iowa?
He is a mature guy. He's a smart kid, and he wants what he wants in the sport. It doesn't change day to day. And a lot of times, when you're on a high, you want everything, and when you're on a low, then you might suck your thumb a little bit. And he's not that way. The one thing that he knows, one area he knows he needs to get better in is being able to handle adversity as it comes up immediately. And that's a metaphor for life. And sometimes when things would happen that went against him in a match, he would let it affect, the remainder of the match, and instead of just getting going again where it kind of left off, and then I can still get a major, or I can still, finish the match strong and not put myself in positions where I could get nicked up, hurt, where I could give points away, where the guy's coming on strong, and even though I get my hand raised, I'm not feeling good about it. He's working hard on that, and this may be a chance to let him breathe a little bit and really focus on that, because that's where his mind is. And sometimes you need that break, but, we tried to address that in the off season as well. But, you saw his last match in the national tournament last year, and that wasn't fun. And so, we had to pull him off the mat there, and we had to drag him off the mat is probably a better description of that. And, the right thing to do was to repair him and get him ready to go for the future. And with these rules, there's a good chance that he'll get an additional year, which is the right way the rule right way to interpret the rule.
Last year in your preseason press conference, you talked a lot about recruiting and how you have changed your views on recruiting, or at least how you approach it. How do your views on recruiting continue to evolve? Because you said you have to be absolutely sure with these kids anymore. How do you make sure that you get the right recruit for your program?
Yeah, and I don't know if you're going to ever be sure, but one thing that we've done is we don't say, let's pass on him. I don't know. I don't know. Let's slow play this guy. We want anybody and everybody that we think can help us. Yeah, that's a challenge with 9.9 scholarships. But we have definitely become more aggressive, and it still has to be the right person. It has to be the right fit, I guess, is a better word, attitude-wise and all that. But I believe, and the great Dan Gable, I lived under his system and coached with him under the system, is I believe that, mental toughness and emotional stability can be taught. And so you see a real talented guy that, you might pass on because, for whatever reason, he might not be able to hack it, because you are adding riding time and you're adding an extra minute to the match going from high school. We're a lot more aggressive with those guys.
When you get a recruit and you see him for the first time and he comes into the fold, how often are you looking at how they develop and you say, hey, this is exactly the picture I thought was going to happen? And how many times are you wrong and you have to tweak the system a little bit on how you approach that athlete?
Well, I don't think that I tell you what, I think the power is in the individuals. And I think that these young kids have it at their fingertips to be as successful as they want to be. And the formula is an open mind, a good attitude, coming to work every day with the attitude that I'm going to get better, not to get better, but that I am going to get better. So it's not just about going through the process, and if it works out, that's great. And if it doesn't, then, at least I gave it my best shot. I'm talking about where you actually, move yourself ahead. And that work ethic and effort and attitude is everything. It's paramount. It's the leader in development. A lot of it's up to them, and having that open mind. You got to have thick skin. That's why, it's not for everybody. That's why not everybody's the champion, because it's easy to talk about maybe, but very hard to put into play when things aren't going your way. There's a lot of things that life throws at you that isn't, perfect. I mean, your grandparents sometimes die. Sometimes, things don't go your way with tragedy and that with family members or whatever. I might make a bad decision, but how do I rebound from that? How do I go on? How do I keep things in perspective? And, that's a thick-skinned approach, and that's real life. That's real life, how we have to operate.
Austin DeSanto is someone that seems like a fan favorite, adds a spark to the lineup. People like him. He rolls out under the mat. Has he provided that spark internally in your room?
Well, I was probably thinking about him a little bit when I was talking, because he's that way. He's got the attitude. He's got the motor. I know when he walks out the mat that it's not going to be, man, can this guy keep it together for 7? And, it's just a matter of getting him calmed down almost. And then, wrestling him in his best positions and being able to continue to build and score and, sometimes be savvy in situations that require you to be savvy or maybe smart at the time. And he's definitely gotten better. And the funny thing with him is the kind of the double standard that has been, when I remember when we went to the national tournament, there was a big story on him, and how he did this, that was positive, and did that was positive. And they were giving him a lot of credit. And then, and then he transferred to the University of Iowa, and it just seems like public opinion just went completely 180 against him. And I know he didn't do himself any favors, at the national tournament last year in that match. But, you know what, he's young, and it's not like it's a every time thing. And I think that, here's the thing. Thank God for Iowa wrestling fans. They're numerous. There's a lot of them, and really they're the only ones that matter when you're wearing that singlet. And there's something to, just let the haters hate and just ignore them and go on about your business. And, you're going to have to learn. You have to be on guard and know that people are trying to maybe get the most out of you. And that's part of preparation and getting ready to go on the mat, as much as skills and technique and the hard training. And he's done that. He's learning, and he's done that. And I knew that he would be a good fit. And, Terry wanted to recruit him, in the beginning when he was wrestling Lee the first year when they were juniors. And there was something there that Terry really liked about him. And we just didn't have the money to go after him. We knew it would take a lot of money. And we got a second chance at him, and we had to get him. And it worked out. And it's been good, and it was a good thing. And at the time, and it's become a better thing with time.
Tom, was
it's becoming seasoned.
Was that his call to go down in the third period Sunday again against Lezak, or was that a corner call, or what?
Well, that was him thinking probably he was going neutral, and then there was discussion on the sideline, and so he just said, "Hey, you make the call." And so the call comes from the corner, go down. It's early in the season, and what I mean by that is, we want to win that match. It's important, but you know what? We know you can get off the bottom, and the bottom line is in the second period, he was out a couple different times. And just a little bit of more, explosion, change of pace where you shake the guy off you, catch the leg coming in, throw it off, more where it's not just one pace. And plus he felt him for 2 minutes. So, I don't know if we were gambling there and holding our breath. I think we just believe in our guy's motor and the way that he can make adjustments.
As it relates to the Minnesota meet, you had a couple guys there that were just maybe 1 or 2 seconds, maybe 5 seconds away from getting that win. I know you don't like moral victories, but you have to feel good about the pace at the end of those matches, especially at 174 with Bowman.
Our guys get ready to go in matches, and they wrestle hard for 7 minutes. It favors them, and that's what we were doing, and the thing that you're saying there, you're probably talking about Bowman and Mirren, but look at Wilkie and Warner. I mean, we had 2 guys there that, are going for major decisions at the end, and, we need to get those major decisions. So there's work to do there. You point out something that, might be a moral victory and, we're going to get better, but, we also have to nail that down. Dominant wrestlers win close matches, and dominant wrestlers score points when it matters, and it matters to get a major decision. And I don't know if Jacob Warner really wrestled. I think he learned something from, letting that guy go and going after the major. I think he learned something very important, that, those points aren't automatic. And I still have to be at a high level, even though I'm winning that match by a margin that's large enough to, get a major decision or get those bonus points.
Jacob Warner is an interesting case because he placed 5th at the Midlands, but in watching his matches, it just didn't seem like he got rattled. He was still able to be in those matches, even though they were close. There was a couple he could have just let it slip away, but found a way to win in the consolation bracket. Has he improved on that, and how is he going to continue to develop to make sure he's in a position to possibly win a national championship?
He needs mat time, and he needs to become seasoned, like I was talking about with DeSanto. He wrestled in the World Championships at the end of September there in the U20 Worlds in Trnava and, or wherever it was. And, the bottom line is that, then he had an injury. The bottom line is that he hasn't had probably the mat time that he needs, and some guys don't need the mat time. He's one of those guys that needs the mat time. And then the break was a little bit long for him at Christmas because of a couple nicks and dings and injuries. And I think we're on track now. When I say I think, that's not a real confident statement. But when I say I think we're on track there, we're managing the injury better. We're managing some of the little things that really add up over time that make you more seasoned, and things that make you better because it's relaxed. And there's something to a relaxed, focused intensity. And I think he's embracing all those things, and he's growing up a little bit. It hasn't been easy, and it isn't easy. And he realizes that. So, and I'll tell you what, he's a soldier. He is a soldier. He tunes in. And, his high school coach told me when we got the commitment from him, he said, when you talk to him, you better be clear and make sure that he understands, because he will do exactly what he thinks you mean. He will do everything you say. And that's true. He will do whatever you say. And those coaching communication, it has to be very clear, because, he'll go a million miles an hour in the kind of right direction when maybe there was a little bit of a misunderstanding, when we need him going, the right direction all the way, not kind of the right way.
What have you learned about?
But he's doing it. He's doing it.
What have you learned about Spencer Lee this season?
I think Spencer Lee has learned about himself that he's going to get everybody's best shot, and that it's not automatic, and it's not easy the next time. The next time out is not easy, and nobody's laying down for anybody. And pace matters. Again, he's got an open mind. There's a lot of positive in that Minnesota match. People, our fans, they understand how hard it is, so they're not maybe panicked. But every once in a while, you get a question, what's wrong with Spencer Lee? Well, this is college wrestling, folks. I mean, this is what you get. You get coaches that are smart and strategize and slow it down and take a page from somewhere where they saw some success. And, you got to be able to pick up on that strategy, and you can't get lulled into it, a slow pace, or become complacent. He loves to wrestle. He loves to train. He needs to embrace probably the boring, mundane things of it a little more. And he's doing that. He knows he has to do that. He owns things. He puts it on himself. And he's very accountable. He looks in that mirror, and he's very accountable.
Why the decision to wrestle Connor Corbin at heavyweight against Minnesota?
Well, our heavyweight that we're going to use, that's more of a heavyweight, needed to see that, he wasn't wrestling the big bad wolf. And I think he did see that. And that's a really, really good wrestler there. And, we needed to maybe watch that match up close to learn a little bit with Costello. And then Stoll didn't even make the trip because it doesn't do him any good to do 10-hour bus ride, where he's at with his situation. So, I think it was important just to see if you compete hard. And our guy didn't even believe until about the fourth minute. Corbin. So when Corbin came off that match, realizing, the same thing I just said there. I mean, you just fight these guys, and, that's not a shot at anybody. That's not a shot at Stevenson. That's just an adage. That's a philosophy. That's the thing that I was talking about earlier, where in this sport, it's not, it's not a rocket science trying to figure it out. But I'll tell you what, you just got to stay in there, and the painful things, persevere through them. Hey, stud, persevere through this. Fight him from the beginning, and who knows how that match ends up? Who knows?
Tom, I'm not sure I've seen a conclusion to a match like there was the other day at 157, Kaleb Young in that throw. Is that something that you've seen in his arsenal, or is that something that was just kind of instinctual in the moment?
Well, he can go upper body. He can do it, and like he said, he didn't want to be there, but he let it fly. But and I think in another interview, and I don't think the one on the Big Ten Network really got his thoughts out, but he can he can do some things upstairs too. We certainly don't want to be in double unders that deep when the guy's stepping inside like that, but that's how you wrestle it. And, Randy Lewis was a proud guy on that one.
Hey, Tom, when you look at the University of Iowa wrestling program, this is larger than life in a lot of ways, and it gives a lot of people meaning. And you're the head wrestling coach of that program. Do you ever step back and think about that, about how important Iowa wrestling is to other people?
Yes, all the time. We take our jobs very seriously. We are in the entertainment business. We are in the accountability business. I've said it a lot since 2010 and 2011 and 2012. The last time we won was 2010. I've said it a lot. There's very few programs where you get the great privilege of being a part of and being the leadership of, where the fans, the administration, the coaches, and the wrestlers are all on the same page as far as the expectations, and throw the alum in there as well. And it's important to our alum that we're at a high level. It's important to our fans that we're at a high level. It's important to our administration that we're at a high level. And when you look at how we operate as coaches and how our guys come to work every day, and that Hawkeye Wrestling Club, who are very close, marching with us lockstep in what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to win the nationals at 10 weights every year. That's a rare thing to do if you really think about it. So yes, we do know how important Iowa wrestling is to a lot of people. I answer a lot of letters, a lot of emails, people that are sick, that have been Hawkeye fans their whole entire life, from young kids. I just got a letter the other day from a young guy who's battling something. And, Terry and I sent him some stuff and wrote him a letter, and he wrote me a letter back. Both his parents went to Iowa State. They're both Iowa State fans, but he's an Iowa fan, and so is his sister. And, that's a great thing to read. And, we catch the fancy and the imagination of young people, but we also, have a job to do with, the expectations of the administration and the fans. And we operate at a high level. That's why we do it right. That's why academics are important. We had our best semester in the history of the program. This past fall of 18, was our highest cum GPA across the board. And those things are important to us, and they're important to our administration. And, our fans, I'd probably, overplaying the significance on that, even though some fans they're very, very, tuned into what we're doing academically. But, it's important to perform in all areas of this program. That's a long answer, but I have to address it properly.
One of the people that is completely on board with what you're doing, and it happens to be on the women's side of things. You have the Hawkeye Wrestling Club there with the Regional Training Center. Scott Beck, who has a daughter, Michaela Beck, in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. She's actually not enrolled in school, but putting all her focus into wrestling. He's said that you give as much attention to the females in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club as anyone else. Looking at your regional training center with the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, why is it important to expand that female portion of the RTC?
Well, we have expanded it, and Allie Reagan is the trailblazer, and she was here a year or so, and Lauren Louise was in our program as well with Cornell and Mike Giroux. But, Allie Reagan is the trailblazer, and she was here a year, and then she handpicked, a group of girls that were hard workers, and they weren't necessarily her best friends. They've certainly become very tight, but she picked a handful of girls that have the same mentality she does. And she has been instrumental in communicating what she needed, and we pulled the trigger on it. Randy Novak, our board president, listened to us. He obviously also agreed that it was important, and it is important, and we're probably behind. And so, you give us credit for doing it, but, we're probably behind times, and it's been great. And, the thing is, Scott Beck may say that, but that's a no-brainer. And that's just, a lot of recruits come in, like if they're going to walk on or if they're not on as much money as so-and-so, is my kid going to get the attention? That goes without saying in our program. You know, if you put forth the effort in your academics and you're taking care of business and the distractions are minimal, and when you make a mistake, you learn from it and grow from it, and you're in that wrestling room every day to get better, it doesn't matter what level you're at, you're going to get the attention. And, you know, the women are no different. You know, with that comes a responsibility that we got to do a good job with them, because Terry Steiner, you know, in a way is entrusting us, you know, something that's new. You know, we've been able to put guys in the world team in the men's area. I was able to compete at a high level. Terry Brands, Roy Salzer, Randy Lewis, the Bannix, Davis, you know, all those guys as well, you know, going back through time. So, you know, it's not new that, you know, we're doing it on our campus in our wrestling room with the men. But, you know, we have to honor, you know, what Terry Steiner's standards are as well. And the communication with him, you know, while it hasn't been, you know, a lot of maybe one-on-one talking though, but, you know, I get a lot of emails and a lot of communication from Terry Steiner. So I know he expects us to be, you know, at a high level, and that goes without saying. And then we have Mark Perry in there who's doing a good job as well. And, you know, we just got to keep moving forward in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club.
Do you like the regional training center model?
I think it's essential. It's literally millions of dollars in subsidized training for USA Wrestling. I mean, literally. And it's essential to the development of wrestling in this program, and not just for USA Wrestling. And some of these coaches that are against it, well, now you're saying that, well, colleges should subsidize. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that colleges should subsidize USA Wrestling. I'm saying it's essential for development of wrestling across the country for young wrestlers, to have the level of wrestling that we have on these college campuses, because there's only one Colorado Springs USA Wrestling Training Center. There's only one United States OTC, and there's several high-level regional training centers: Ohio State, Nittany Lion, Hawkeye, Nebraska, Stillwater, Minnesota. You know, and I don't mean to leave anybody out that's at a high level, but they're very important to the development of wrestling in this program. And, you know, frankly, you know, you can't say that, you know, I would think differently if I was somewhere else, because when we were at Virginia Tech, you know, the second or third thing that I did after hiring the best coaching staff that I could hire was start to shore up our postgraduates. And we got Lee Fullhart there, and we got Nick Fichetti there after, you know, Wes Hand's the one that got me hired, but we hired Doug Schwab as a coach. And then we started on our postgraduate club. We got Nick Fichetti and Lee Fullhart. And that's how important it was. And that was the model that Gable and Kurtelmeyer and Roy Carver Sr., you know, were trailblazers. And we got these guys that are giving seminars, you know, and how to do it, and because they got the perfect model and this and that. That model's 40 years old. You know, you guys didn't invent anything. You know, Roy Carver Sr. trailblazed that, and now Penn State has taken that and to unprecedented heights with, you know, what's rumored to be a $7 million or $7.5 million spendable gift. And that's what we're trying to get. We have to have it. And it's great for USA Wrestling. It's great for development in this country.
Your youngest child, Tommy, is a senior in high school. He has been known for theater. How fun has that been to watch him in plays and just expand his role and as he goes into college?
It's fun. The first time I saw him, I'm sitting in the crowd. I'm going, I can't believe that's my kid. He's got a lot of courage to be up there, because, you know, I don't know how I would deal with that. The other thing is that these actors and, you know, show choir and the preparation they put in is, you know, it's hours. And in wrestling, you know, sometimes, especially as the season gets to the end and you're, you know, getting ready to go, they shorten up a little bit, you know, where you're doing, you know, maybe an hour and 20, you're in and out towards the end of the year, you know, and those preparation sessions for those, you know, dress rehearsals and whatever, they get longer as you get closer to it. And then they do the whole doggone thing, you know, before you even do the whole doggone thing, when the people who buy the tickets sit down, and they put a lot of time in. So that's something that, you know, I never knew, and I never dreamed about how much commitment there is. And, he loves it. He wants to make it his career, maybe something in, maybe production or whatever. If it doesn't work out, the acting part of it. But one thing is it's more than just a hobby with him. And, the only thing I've ever told my kids is you got to have your homework done. And if you need help with anything, you ask me and I will be there. And they've gotten their homework done for the most part. And, they've asked, and we've helped them as much as we can when they ask, and the world is theirs or not to do with.
Well, you said earlier that you're in the entertainment business. What kind of acting advice can you give your son based on that?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I don't look at it that way. Be yourself, big dog. Be yourself. I don't know. I get a lot of comments from some of our fans that say that they watch our bench as much as they watch the wrestling, and I don't know if I'm proud of that or not. I'm not. But what you see is real, and it's not. And the other thing is we have some coaches. I just talked about how important it is to be at a high level, and we have coaches that fight. I mean, they fight for their athletes, and Telford, Ben Burhow was great, but Telford's a little bit of an upgrade there, maybe. Where he's not as passive, maybe more fiery. And we need that. Our guys need to feel that, and we need that. We need that. It really is us against the world.
Is it fun having your daughters involved in the program?
Yeah, we have great help, and Luke Eustace does a great job, but we've really upgraded that part of it as well. We have 5 managers now that are hands-on. Ashley Clark and Jenna Novak are 2 of our newer ones, and they're doing a great job as first year, and they're going to be the veterans next year, going to be leading the charge. But Mariah Stickley and Elise Owens and Madigan Brands, they're the 3 veterans, and Mariah and Elise are the senior level there, and they've all done great work, and it's really like having 5 staff members. That's the level of work they do. And we don't even have to delegate anymore. They're already doing what the delegation would entail. I mean, they're ahead of it. And that takes a lot of work off what we're trying to do. And it makes our guys feel like they're being taken care of. I mean, doing laundry, driving, guys having an extra vehicle so they can shuttle, quick to food, to an arena, to a workout or whatever, because not everybody's on the same page in this sport.
Tom, when you
as far as what they need. So go on. Sorry.
When you grew up in Sheldon, Iowa, back in the 80s, Iowa Public Television probably was your only access to high-level college wrestling. And now, we can get on the computer and a few taps of the keyboard, watch pretty much all the high-level guys across the world. What do you think this would have been like for Tom and Terry Brands if you had access to the type of high-level technique and watching the top guys in the world? What would that have been like for you guys back in 1987?
Well, we knew the Russian lineup because we would wrestle a dual meet, and it would be the Americans against the Russians. And we knew those names. So we knew the best guys in the world. You'd get the publication, and it might be a couple weeks old, but you'd see the results of the World Cup in Toledo, Ohio, every single year. You'd see those results, and, I wouldn't change anything. I got to wrestle with my brother our entire life. And, whether it was checkers, chess, Monopoly, whatever, wrestling, one-on-one baseball, one-on-one football, we got to wrestle each other. So, that's what was great about it. And neither one of us would ever back down, no matter how bad you were maimed or injured. You would keep fighting, even if you could move your pinky. You'd flick them in the ear with your pinky. And that's probably pretty rare. Looking back on it, it was how I grew up. And when I was young, I didn't really pay much mind to it. But then you see how people sometimes take a back seat in certain situations. And, it would appall me when people would kind of like cower from a challenge. But it's pretty rare to, stick your neck out and keep it stuck out and keep hammering, even when you're getting bloodied, because it hurts. but you do it anyway because of what you want and because of how the world is. The world's a cruel place, and you battle through those things. But, you know, I just did an article, an interview, and it hasn't come out yet, but just last week with Brian Van Clay on the same thing. I do think that's why young people are better quicker now, is because of the access. And, you know, I'm talking to you on a cell phone right now, and I could probably, if I knew how, I could probably be watching video as I'm talking to you. And they have these devices that they can carry around with them wherever they go, and they can have their nose, you know, becoming experts in the most cutting edge, meaning if it happened 20 minutes ago and it's online, I can look at it and emulate the hold, copy the technique. And so that is an advantage, and that's why maybe development is accelerated, why these young kids are so good, so young. And maybe not that there wasn't that before, but that there's more of them. I mean, it's definitely more prevalent. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But does it inhibit imagination? Because when we hear you say that, or Gable talk about playing games in the yard, does it take away that component because we can see everything already?
Maybe. I mean, when I put the phone down and I got to go out in the mat and I got to copy that, you know, I'm running a highlight reel in my mind. You know, I'm trying, like I saw a kid in high school do a move that some MMA guy did, but the MMA guy did it and hooked the ankle and then brought it up and he's going to break the guy's knee off. Well, the wrestler, you know, did the roll and ended up getting a takedown off it. And, you know, he didn't just look at the video and then it happened. He had to use his imagination at some point. So that imagery was there. So his mind's operating at a high level. It's just different. I think there's a lot too, sandlot football games, baseball games, one-on-one pickup games. And, you know, some of the best memories that I have with my kids is 3-on-1 basketball on the trampoline. You know, where all three of them would gang up on me and I'd take them on. And, you know, I tried to keep that alive, but, you know, there's just so many organized clubs and where, you know, these kids don't ever get to do it on their own, where they're in the front yard scrapping for their life. You know, they're in a wrestling room environment, and when things get out of hand, mommy and daddy step in, you know, or if something gets out of hand and the coach didn't handle it right, mommy and daddy step in and move you to the local neighbor club. And, you know, I don't believe in that, but, you know, I also had a lot of help where, you know, I would go to practice, and I had a great high school coach that believed in conditioning was the bedrock for what we were accomplishing. And then we would come home and we would eat. And an hour later, this pig farm from Northwest Iowa named Randy Fakis would drive into town and come into our basement, and we'd go to work with him on tight waist and chicken wings on the mat that he gave us. So I had a private club, you know, so it's the same, but it's different. It's just more organized. It's more, you know, it's high definition now instead of, you know, wood paneled walls with nails sticking out of it and a wore out mat with a guy who takes an interest in two young guys that their parents are divorced. Now you have, you know, a fee you pay, and you go into a warm wrestling room with a doggone good facility with a high level coach, and you got all these training partners, and that's the world we're living in.
How much do you miss the days of a dual meet and then you wake up the next day and there's a press citizen with an article by Andy Hamilton?
Okay, say that again.
I said you wake up the next day, you just got done with the dual meet, you open the press citizen, and there's an article by Andy Hamilton. How much do you miss those days?
Oh, okay. I didn't know where you're going. See, you're cutting out a little bit, the tail end. Okay, so Andy Hamilton, you know, let's talk about Andy Hamilton here. Andy Hamilton is the best, and not because I have a relationship going way back. Where the comment the best comes from is commitment to your job, is follow up to your job, hustle to your job. And he follows up, he hustles, he's committed. I mean, before he was working at track wrestling, he went to the world championships on his own dime on vacation time. And it wasn't even overseas. That's commitment. And that's what the sport needs. And so, you know, when you talk about wrestling, it's commitment and all these things that you talk about that are, it's not rocket science, but it's painful. That's why Andy Hamilton has won awards, been around a long time at a high level, running track wrestling because of that hustle, commitment, dedication. And he understands and applies the wrestling mentality that there's going to be pain when you're trying to grow and when you're trying to move forward. So, you know, I miss those days, but you know, Life to Co he's high level and, you know, so, you know, he's not doing it much, but you know, but yeah, you miss Andy Hamilton. So it's a privilege for me to be on the call with both of you guys. Hey, how's your body fat, by the way, Klingman?
Mine's low, man. It's, I don't know that I've gained that much over the course of my life. I've gained some weight, but I think I'm doing pretty good. You ain't going to pinch much.
I know, I'm kidding you, but you got to keep that mile time down too. You got to keep that edge.
I know. Hey, we like to play games. We're talking about mile times. It's painful, but are you willing to play a game with us?
I love games.
Okay. This game is unique. We've never played this game. It's specific to you. It's called Test Tom Brands' Memory. I'm going to ask you a series of questions until you get to 5 answers right. Are you ready to play the game?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1. Who was your very first match against at your very first NCAA championship in 1989?
I have no idea.
It was John Kaner from Navy. You got to fall.
Oh, that's good. I got to fall.
Question number 2. Which former Iowa wrestling All-American has pearly white teeth?
Randy Lewis I accused him of that.
Yep, that's exactly right. So you now have your first answer there. Number 3, in the film The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, who plays Liberty Valance?
Lee Marvin.
Man, you got that right. I didn't think that was going to happen. Congratulations.
You knew I would get that.
Well, okay,
you sent
I
me a
did.
poster that does on me.
I did.
Is this interview getting corny? Are we still recording, right?
Oh, we're still recording. We love corny, baby.
So people are going to see a different side of me.
Well, we hope so. Question number 3. Who was your very first Midlands champion as the head wrestling coach at the University of Iowa?
Wow. I don't know. Was it Mark Perry?
It was not. It was not Mark Perry, although he made the finals that year. It was not Mark Perry. I'll give you a hint. Go up a weight class if you can remember who was at 174.
Eric Ludke.
Eric Ludke beat Doug Umbauer of Ryder at 174 in 2006.
Eric Ludke was one tough son of a gun. We recruited him at Virginia Tech. We went all the way to Kansas and we got there, and then we realized that he was already going to Iowa, but he thought it would be cool to have Tom Brands in his living room. So myself and Doug Schwab went all the way from Virginia to Kansas, all the way to the western side of Kansas to recruit him, and then found out, and he was honest. We played darts in his basement and did this and that, and we had a good time down there, but it was just because he thought it'd be cool to have us in his house. and then I got to coach him for 2 years, so. Yep. Or 1 year. 1 year. It was 1 year.
You got it. Next question. I think what do you have? We'll give you that. 3 right so far. Who plays the lead male role in the film Message in a Bottle?
Kevin Costner. Chick flick. I love chick flicks. I love them.
All right. You got that right. And let's see here. How many points did you put up in your match against Joey Gilbert during your semifinal match of the 1991 NCAA championships?
33, and the only reason why I know that is because that's a topic and a favorite topic, like with Randy Lewis, and you all know Randy Lewis. He loves to talk about the past, and a lot of people accuse Randy Lewis of talking about the past and only himself, but he is fair. He spreads it around. He'll talk about other people as well, and so 33.
All right, in the final question, if you can get this right, who was your very first All-American as a head wrestling coach?
First one was, in chronological order would have been Dave Hoffman, and then Mike Faust. I had 2 that year.
Yep. You got it. this has been a fun game. It's the only time we'll play Test Your Memory with Tom Brands unless you come on the show again. But congratulations on getting 5 questions right.
You got to be Tom Brands to play the game because nobody else can beat Tom Brands, I guess, right?
That's true. And that's why this game was specific to you. So thank you for playing. Thanks for being on this program. And we will look forward to seeing you having a blast at the national championships this year.
All right, we got to roll. We got to get better. Thanks. See you guys.
That was Tom Brands, head wrestling coach at the University of Iowa. Andy, we had about 45 minutes of thoughts from Tom Brands, someone that you covered numerous years at the Iowa City Press-Citizen. Initial thoughts on what Tom said about this season and his athletes.
Remember last week when we had Bob Bowlsby and afterward it felt like we could have talked for an entire day? Like, that's the same way with Tom, right? There's so much stuff we could cover. And we could have probably just gone hours and hours and hours about this year's team. There's so like, we never even got to Alex Marinelli.
I know. And I felt bad about that because that was a topic of conversation that I wanted to have because I think he is the guy this year on the team. I think he's the spark plug, a guy that really is completely bought in. Not that anyone else isn't bought in, but it just seems like he's the emotional leader on the team this year. We didn't even get a chance to talk to him, but you're right. We could have kept going more and more and more. We said when we lined this up that we were going to get him for about 20 to 30 minutes, and we're in 45 minutes at least. So
those were promises that you made that you didn't keep, right?
I didn't keep them. And I knew on the 20-minute side it was going to be a little bit low, but we went beyond that. But as we break down what Tom Brands has said and we look back at it just in this initial interview that we had, a lot of reasons to be optimistic, and the Kemmer injury hurts. It really does as far as their chances this year and how they're going to perform, because he really was another guy like Marinelli where you can count on him, and you like his disposition and what he brings to the team and all those intangibles. That's hard not to have in your lineup.
Yeah, the silver lining is you're going to probably have him for 2021 now, though. So yeah. I think it's rare that you see a rule that gets put into place where pretty much everybody agrees that it's the right thing. But the fact that they're relaxing the requirements for medical hardship, I think is a really good move by the NCAA. And, just Michael Kemmer seems to me the type of student athlete that kind of embodies what the NCAA wants. And it's good that we're going to see him out there, hopefully at full strength for 2 more seasons here. I think that would be great for college wrestling, great for the University of Iowa, and it's the right move. And so, they lose something. He's a guy that goes out, attacks. We don't see Michael Kemmer in 3-2 matches very often, and just a lot of fun to watch. And so hopefully he's on track with his recovery and rehab, and we see the best version of Michael Kemmer here in the fall of 2019 and for 2 more seasons going forward.
As we close out this edition, let's just maybe go back to Austin DeSanto. That weight class is absolutely loaded. You at Track just had an article about just some of the changing at the 133-pound weight class. Seth Gross is no longer ranked because he has not competed this season. But
1 match. He's got 1 match. It's been
1 match. Okay.
2 months, though.
Yeah. So he's out of the rankings, but that weight class is an absolute gauntlet. Where does he end up? I know we can't make predictions on what that looks like. Only he can make that decision for himself. But it's going to be really interesting to just see the lane that Austin DeSanto is able to follow to be able to break through. Making the top 8 in that weight class is going to be really a bear. But I think he has the skill set. He has the disposition. Even if he loses, I think he has that Iowa tradition to be able to be successful on the backside, no matter where he ends up in the pecking order.
Well, I think one thing, if you look at where he was a year ago and maybe some of the struggles he had on the bottom position, for him to go down Sunday against Ethan Lezak and be able to get a reversal there in the 3rd period. I mean, granted, it took him a while. It took him almost 4 minutes to get one, but being able to go down, not get turned, and find a way to get away, I think is really big for him. And so we're seeing steps in his development, and he's got a long way to go yet. But as you mentioned, it's a bear of a weight class. When you take Seth Gross out, you still got Stevan Micic, who was a medalist at the European Senior Championships this past spring. In addition to him, Daton Fix, guy that ran through the Junior World Championships in 2017. Nick Suriano, guy that, what's he lost? Maybe like 3 matches now in his career, 4 matches in his career through 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons.
He's been a rock, hasn't he?
Yeah, there's some really good guys. Austin DeSanto down there. I think we got him like 7th in the rankings, 7th, 8th in the rankings. Austin Gomez has been a highlight reel this season, a guy that's absolutely relentless, and you're gonna have to put him away. You can't give him a crack in the door. We saw that repeatedly this season, especially at the Southern Scuffle a couple times in a row. You got Roman Bravo Young, who's outside the top 8 in the rankings, but certainly high upside there. It's just a really deep weight class with a lot of talented competitors, and probably, to me, the weight class I'm most intrigued about moving forward the rest of the season.
That round of 16 is going to be awesome. And then you go into the quarters, semis. It's going to be the weight class to watch. We have to watch our time right now. We have to close this out. Thanks to Tom Brands for being on the program. As always, for Andrew Timothy Hamilton of Track Wrestling, I'm Kyle Klingman. You have been listening to On the Mat.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.